beyond the classroom. We would like to start this webinar with the opening message from Director of Vidya Sagar, Mrs. Radha Ramesh. Radha.
Hi, good evening, all of you. A warm welcome to the participants and the esteemed panelists, Padma Shri Dr. Sudha Kaul, Malini, Bhavna, Rajundi, Namita, Anil Prabhakar, Mr. Narayanan, and Dr. Pradipta Biswas. It is an honor and a great pleasure to have you all with us to talk about AAC, an area of work that is growing but too slowly. All of you are the stalwarts, and we look at you to help us build this expertise in the country. Thank you for being with us. When we think about communication, we typically think of teaching, learning, and academic purposes mostly. Children and adults with special needs experience different forms of exclusion, cut off from play, leisure, and social activities, and that limits active participation in their family, community, and society. This isolation can have lasting effects on future opportunities and participation. Hence, we came up with the topic AAC Beyond Classroom for today's webinar. I'm happy to see the overwhelming responses of more than 60 participants across the country for the basic course conducted by us for the past 3 months. The enthusiastic participation shows the interest to learn and implement the use of AAC in various settings apart from academics. This has paved the way to further enhance the capacity of AAC learners, and we are conducting an advanced course for 4 weeks in this month of December, starting from today. This is a step towards our dream of having AAC better understood in our country and also developing more strategies to make non-verbal children truly participate even beyond the classroom when they finish school. Once again, a warm welcome, and we all look forward to new learning from this webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Radha. Thank you for the lovely message. I request Poonamaka to please give us a few words. Poonam,
yeah. Is that, am I visible? Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, good evening to all. It's such a wonderful pleasure to see everybody here in the webinar and and the participants. Actually, this is a culmination of what the 3-month training program that Radha was talking about. And I've really been looking forward to it. Actually, I've been looking forward to the growth of AAC in this country because when I was in National Trust and I was constantly trying to get from IICP, the Katha Mala, and talk to all the 800 registered organizations. I found lots of people, lots of NGOs did not know much about AAC. Some knew, some didn't know. And I feel a lot of nonverbal children just get left at home. They don't get admissions because schools don't know about AAC across the country. So I think it's so important that we all join hands and really take it across our country. And in the beginning, many, many years ago, IICP, IIT Kharagpur were producing some indigenous, so many different materials, and we were using them. But and those are very good. But with children, when Bhavna was in school and we had many non-verbal kids, we always felt this lack of indigenous AAC devices in the country. So I want to tell you a little story about Vidya Sagar, about a seminar, a conference that we had in 2005. I think everybody here was there also, called the Silent Revolution. And I'm so proud of that conference because it was only for the techies, for IIT techies. And I think we just showed them films of what our children could do and what all they wanted to say and how they were so restricted. And that also became like the beginning of so many different inventions from IIT Madras and now from the Institute of Advanced Studies and invention labs. And that's it's been fantastic. Actually, it was in 2012. I was in National Trust, and I went for a meeting. I went for a conference to Bangalore, to the Institute of Advanced Studies, and there was Ajit Narayan. I'd never met him, and he suddenly was presenting this how he had the story of Avaz, and he said it all started when he went to a conference called Silent Revolution in Vidya Sagar. And I was really thrilled with that, because I said this is a conference that has really gone had far-reaching and over time a kind of an influence. And of course, the cherry in the cake was when Bhavana went to the US and was just looking at all the different AAC devices, and she was shown Avaz over there. So, it gives us a lot of confidence that with lots of things that we can have in our country, they can be on Google Play and they can be all over the world. So I think between the organization IICP, Vidya Sagar, and people who are working in AAC now, I think we really, really have one responsibility, and that comes from my experience at the National Trust, to really take AAC across the country. And that's what I've been pushing Kalpana and Raju to do. And today's webinar, I think, is the result of one of those pushings. So thank you so much for being here, and I really look forward to this webinar. All very welcome to the panelists. I'm waiting to hear from you, and very welcome to all the participants here. Thank you for being here. Thank you.
Thank you, Poonam. Thank you for this encouraging words, and thank you for pushing us. Now we start the webinar with our AAC user, Bhavna. We'll be starting it. We have a small intro video of Bhavna. Bhavna is an alumna of Vidya Sagar. She is a commerce graduate from Ethiraj. She is a founder editor of Connect Special, a digital magazine. Bhavna is the current president of Isaac India chapter. She is a team member of TARA, a team for accessibility and reasonable accommodation at Vidya Sagar. Bhavna is an AAC user. She uses eye-pointing chart and a variety of assistive technology. She uses a movement sensor switch with her right foot. That is what we see on the video right away.
When can we meet? Row 1.
Welcome, Bhavna. Over to you. Suja, please play the video.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. One second.
AAC, COVID, total communication. Good evening to all. It's an honor to be sharing my thoughts on building relationships with AAC in the presence of my gurus. Social connections are the relationships we have with the people around us. These are our energy boosters. They reflect the love, care, respect, and value we hold for each other. Communication is a necessity to build such relationships. For people like me with complex communication needs, AAC has been that one tool which gave us the wings to connect with others. I can confidently say that my eye-pointing chart lets me participate in meaningful relationships with others. It is not an easy task. There are many challenges. Okay, I'll Just trying to set the volume higher. Hold on. Share my personal experience. If my schooling phase at Vidya Sagar equipped me with a mode to communicate and instilling loads of self confidence, the senior secondary phase at a mainstream school, Lady Andal Matriculation, was my first major encounter of making peers accept AAC. Honestly, no one had time nor tried to learn my eye pointing mode. But total communication came in handy, and we could say hi and bye and enjoy each other's company. College was comparatively easy. Friends had a better attitude and made it a point to learn my mode of communication. I too realized what it takes to form relationships. It has to be mutual. This formed meaningful and long lasting relationships. I could say it was the best part of my life, with jokes and secrets to share. That's because of the value and respect for equal participation. Moving forward, thanks to social media, the world around us was becoming tech savvy at breakneck speed, while we, the people with complex communication needs, are still grappling with limited access. Then arrives COVID with a bang. COVID has thrown huge challenges all over the world, and that includes people with disabilities. Some inclusion to cheer. Being nonverbal and homebound is no less than isolation cell in a prison. In this new normal of COVID, social connectivity depended on network connectivity. Luckily, incorporation of universal design has made social media accessible to some extent. This has changed the landscape of options for socializing, and technology has turned out to be the savior in sustaining social connections, at least for some of us. Whether it is with family or friends, social media communication has become a necessity. The best part is between muting and unmuting the mic and camera. Everyone is considering and respecting all forms of communication. That's one big battle won. We tried capturing some such connecting moments of AAC users.
ஏன் ரேஷ்மா இப்படி பண்ண? ஏன் சாச்சுட்ட? ஒழுங்கா சாரி கேளு. என்கிட்ட ஒழுங்கா சாரி கேளு ரேஷ்மா.
சத்குரு, இன்னைக்கு உங்களுக்கு பர்த்டே தானே? அம்மா உங்களுக்கு ஏதாவது ஸ்வீட் பண்ணி தரலான்னு இருக்கேன். உங்களுக்கு என்ன ஸ்வீட் வேணும்? ஓகே, சத்குருக்கு பாயாசம் வேணுமா? ஓகே, அம்மா செய்து கொடுக்குறேன்.
சாம், எனக்கு உனக்கு பிடிச்ச ஸ்டோரி சொல்றியா? என்ன கதைன்னு சொல்ல?
By Samuel, narrated by Lakshita and voiced by Yashita. Superheroes Office.
இதுதான் சூப்பர் ஹீரோ ஆஃபீஸா? ஓகே.
Iron Man.
அயர்ன் மேன். வாவ், நல்லா இருக்கும்.
Spider-Man.
ஸ்பைடர் மேன். எப்படி அவரு ஃப்ளைட் பண்றாரு தெரியல.
Spider-Man climbing. Batman.
Oh, Batman. கதையோட ஹீரோ சொல்லு. Next Sam. Oh, Batman.
Batman gets a phone call.
ஏன் ஃபோன் கால் வருது தெரியலையே. சரி நீ நெக்ஸ்ட் போ.
Batman flies above the building.
எதுக்கு ஃப்ளை பண்றது தெரியலையே. சரி நம்ம பார்ப்போம். நீ நெக்ஸ்ட் போ. Next Sam.
A child is on danger.
அச்சோ, இதுக்காக தான் ஃபோன் பண்ணாங்களா? அப்புறம் பேட்மேன் ஃப்ளைட் பண்ணாரு. இதுக்காக தானா? ஓகே. பாவம். அந்த பொண்ணு ஃபயர்ல மாட்டிட்டு இருக்குதே. ஓகே நெக்ஸ்ட்.
Batman saved the girl.
வாவ், பேட்மேன் சேவ் பண்ணாரு அந்த கேர்ள. சூப்பர். அடுத்தது சாம்.
Samuel as Spider-Man and Captain of America.
இது
We
நீ
hope you all enjoyed Samuel's own story. Thank you.
சூப்பர்.
I am fine.
வரும்போது நம்ம சர்ப்ரைஸா பிளான் பண்ணாமா?
It's a good idea. Shall we all call her at midnight and wish?
W I L L space B A space C A space W I T H space M Y space S I S T A R space A N D space
Oh, six. Oh, great, Rico.
பண்றது பிடிக்குமா? ஓகே சூப்பர். ஸ்டார்ட் பண்ணலாமா? அப்போ சூப்பர். அப்போ பண்ணிடலாம். எப்படி சாட் பண்ணலாம்? எந்த எந்த மோட்ல சாட் பண்ணலாம்? வாட்ஸ்அப்பா, ஜூமா, கூகுள் மீட்டா? எதனா ஒரு மோட் இருக்கணும்ல. எஃபி, ஃபேஸ்புக்கா? சூப்பர். அப்போ இன்னைக்கு ஃப்ரெண்ட் ஓகே. ஃபேஸ்புக் மெசஞ்சர்ல மெசேஜ் அனுப்பிச்சிடு. ஸ்டார்ட் பண்ணிடுவோம். ஓகேவா? சூப்பர்.
Thank you, Bhavna. Thank you for that wonderful insights on relationships. Our appreciations to all those AAC users who shared their videos with us. Now we move on to our first session, Enriching Environments for Communication. We have our first speaker, Mrs. Rajul Padmanabhan. Rajulaka is our former director of Vidya Sagar and is a member of the governing body. She is an educationist and passionate believer in the power of communication and AAC. She has been instrumental in building the communication department at Vidya Sagar. Rajul Padmanabhan has been the vice president in charge of Build at AAC International. AAC is International Society for Augmentative and Alternative Communication. She was the former president of AAC India chapter and has presented many papers on AAC in national and international conferences. Her pet topic is language development, and we are delighted to invite her to share her thoughts. Over to you, Raju.
Thank you, Kalpana. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Thank you so much for these lovely words. And I'm so thrilled to be here and part of this seminar, webinar, or conference, or whatever you'd like to call it, and having so many people that we know and so many people that are new. And it was great to see Bhavna's presentation, but Bhavna has always been so good with words and so well. She presents so well. Good for you, Bhavna. And, from that large topic of, from a larger, I'm going down to a much more smaller but very, very important topic, which is language and creative language and AAC. Suja, can I have the first slide, please? Can I... yeah, no, the next one. The next one. Yeah. I have forgotten the word I intended to say, and my thought, unembodied, returns to the realm of shadows. When I came across this little bit of this poem by a Russian poet called O. Mandelstam, I was actually quite stunned. It's a very, very powerful sort of statement to make. And he is, I think, thinking about a loss of culture in one's own mother tongue. And to me, it clearly says that if I don't have the word to a particular thought, or if the word is not understood or used, then for me, it will cease to exist. What significance does it have for us when we speak of AAC? I sometimes feel that AAC systems or theory has somehow become very unidimensional. We are using it like a teaching aid. We are teaching communication. And teaching and communications are two different things, though they are interrelated. But when you teach, the onus is on the adult or the teacher. But when you facilitate communication, the onus is on the communicator. And we have to keep remembering that. Also, I fear sometimes that the tools, which are the devices and the chart, have become much more important than what communication actually is based on, a rich language. Now, without going into the theory of language, thought, and speech, I do want to reiterate that thought and language is strongly interlinked. Everyone knows that. And the fact that this interaction starts very early and leads on to concept building and the development of more sophisticated thought process is now universally accepted. Also, the fact that Dr. Sudha Kaul and Dr. Anne Warwick mentioned in their book, Their Manner of Speaking, that language, communication, and culture are linked completely. But, can I have the next slide? But language is also a creative activity. Now, what is a creative activity? It's a process by which experience of all kinds are expressed and communicated. It is also a process out of which experiences arise. When we talk of creativity in a child, we're talking of numerous areas, from painting to music to drama to dancing, story writing, pretend play, and so much, much more. If we had to restrict ourselves to creativity, language, and communication, we'd have to accept that a creative environment would enrich creativity, and that would make the language of a child richer. I mean, that's not rocket science, everyone knows that. But let's also accept that creativity, next slide, please. Creativity is technically inherited, but it's inherited by everyone. There's a widely cited study by George Land that found that all children are born creative, but it diminishes as they transition from school and adulthood. I don't know the truth of that entirely, but I do accept that all children, verbal, non-verbal, rich, poor, etc., 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 are creative, born imaginative. So then, when we are faced with a child with special needs, we, as parents and professionals, start on all areas of rehabilitation. We start with physio, speech, etc., etc., and now special education and all sorts of new things that we're doing. But we very rarely look at the area of creativity. And if the child has no functional speech, we would intervene, perhaps rightly, with speech therapy and AAC. But if we pause to think and look at normal development, where everything else is actually geared at normal development, and when we look at how we intervene, we don't look at the area of creativity. And it plays a huge, huge part in the child's language. And this is the very idea that has been worrying me for a while, a relative neglect of creative activity for the child with special need, which happens so naturally in an ordinary child. Most of the early intervention centers have actually mastered the positioning, seating, teaching of early concepts like shapes and sizes. But the natural play or the natural scribbling is very, very rarely, or the natural painting is emphasized. Now, lots of people have told me, creativity is a very esoteric sort of subject, and to look at government schools, you've got to be really bourgeois to think about it like that. But that's not true. That's really not true, because creativity is not bound by class, economics, or caste, or religion, or anything. Children are the same everywhere. Now, from the earliest age, I'm going to go a little into the development of, creative language, or whatever you'd like to call it. A child communicates with themselves and with others by acting or drawing or talking to self. The value of this form of expression is very important. They experience, they express, and they communicate. Next slide, please. In a young child, the experience is very personal, and so is the expression. Aesthetics don't come into it. He's not doing a painting or performing a dance. But while he's engaged in this activity, look around yourselves and you'll realize he's talking to himself. He's communicating what he's experienced to himself, thus clarifying the experience and building on his language and speech. Very often, if he's painting, a child of 2 and 2.5 may not even know what he set out to do. It will start with an oval, which most children do, and then he will go on and give it meaning and carry on till it becomes something quite different from what he had set out to do. So they paint what they experience and experience what they paint. And it is always accompanied and facilitated with speech and comes under the heading of communication. But more often than not, communication with self. By the age of 3, the child begins to communicate with others. If he is drawing, he will now begin to use it to act out his fantasies, and he will be ready to talk about it to himself and even to the adults around him. And if the adult is not listening or not around, what does the child do? He just lets it be and goes on to something else. The child is not looking for accolades. We put up all their paintings on soft boards. Yeah, great, but it's not really what he's looking for. He needed to paint or tell or build a story, and he moved on. But this is the thing. If the adult had listened, he could have added it to the vocabulary. He could have encouraged the child and used this opportunity to enhance the child's language. It is that step. We all do a lot of experiential teaching and lots of creative work, but that one step to take it to enhancing language doesn't always happen. Just to illustrate this, could I have the next slide? A child was painting with red color and made something which could be interpreted as a flower. The mother, who was an avid gardener, saw it and said, "Aha, what a beautiful rhododendron." The child obviously had no idea that was what he drew, but the word fascinated him, and also the rhythm of the word. And so the whole day he repeated it. The painting was forgotten or pushed to the back of his mind, but the word was not. And he had a nice, long, new word in his vocabulary. Now imagine this situation where the child could not speak, and the same incident occurred, and it's very possible. And the mother put the word on his device or chart. I'm almost sure that the child would have used it. Now, by the age of 4 to 5, the child is conversing, and he's now quite adept at using language in a variety of ways. He can now describe what he drew, or maybe tell you about some incident that affected him. He can recite simple nursery rhymes and enjoys doing it. He has so many experiences that he wants to express and does it through various ways. A lot of communicating is happening with self at this stage, though he is now playing with others and even talking about his experiences to the others. And there's a lot of fantasy at this point. Now, if this spontaneous creative activity is given free range and encouraged and taken to the next step of language building, can you imagine how rich the language would be? And this imagination could be triggered with anything. I mean, a block can become a block of flats, it could become a train, a string could become a snake, it could be anything. But the minute you start talking about it, his language would grow and you could add it on his board. You could have a new page entirely on a string. Now, this is important for our child with special needs and no functional speech. They're all creative and they're all imaginative. And their creative activity is based on experience. And experience we give. We try our best. I know all the schools that we see, they've done that. But we need to take this one step further. We need to get the child to talk about his experience, put it down on his board, and thus enlarge or enrich his language. All our communication devices, whether it's Avaz or Hope or whatever it is, there are certain guidelines which are very good. We've done a vocabulary selection, design of the board, all that is very important. But very rarely does the therapist, I haven't seen, I'm sure there must be some, very rarely is there a therapist who actually adds in the element of creativity into this whole process. And that is where I think the language gets very mundane sometimes when we are communicating with our students. And it's not difficult. We just have to shift a little bit and give attention to the fact that a normal child is always talking to himself, is creative and imaginative, and so is our child. So let's just give him the opportunity. Just to illustrate this, now I want to apologize to people who don't know Hindi. A lot of my work has been in Udaipur, which is actually a Hindi-speaking area. So excuse me for that. There's an early intervention center called Sankalp. Could I have the next slide, please? Next slide, yeah. And there's this little girl called Avarnya, who's 3+. And she's got cerebral palsy. She's, well, not a nice word to say, but she's a bright child and has some speech. She loves that poem, Ek Kawa Pyasa Tha, Ghade mein pani thoda tha, Kawa laya kankar, pani aya upar, Kawe ne piya pani, khatam hui kahani. She sort of recited it. And when I was working with her, I substituted the word pani with doodh, water, milk instead of water. And I thought she'd say yuck or yum at the end of it, and we'd carry on. But you know what she did? When she came to pebbles, when conquer, she stopped, grinned, went to the food page, pointed to rice, and said, with milk goes rice, and then we make kheer or payasam. I wasn't expecting that, but she did that. Then, of course, I got a little ambitious, and I thought maybe she'll rhyme the last two lines. That was a little difficult, but it was for me too. So it's no great thing. So, what did I actually do? Nothing. I gave the child time and I followed her way of thinking. It was deviation from what I expected, but so be it. You follow the child and you don't know what you'll come up with. Similarly, can I have the next slide, please? We also have to remember that language is culture specific. Now, here's this young girl. She's got no special needs, but she was very young. And I had taken her out shopping to buy her something for Navratri. And she chose something which was red in color and a little glitzy. So I said, no, we can't have red. I told her, no, you can't buy this. It's too red. She very gently stopped me and said, no, Rajul Bua, it's not red. It's gajari. Gajari is a color which is probably used in Mewar or, in the area of Udaipur. And it's a color, it's a variation of red. It's a carroty color. It's carroty. Now, I was quite stunned because I realized that, can you imagine? I was brought up with red, blue, yellow, green, etc., etc. Never with these subtle colors which came up later. Here's this 6 or 5-year-old girl talking about colors like gajari. Now imagine a communication chart with colors of this sort. What richness. That would be the thing. Just one more example I'm going to give you, which is again culture specific and playing with language. Can I have the next slide, please? This is Praneeth. Sorry, I have forgotten to write his name. And again, he's from Sankalp, and I was working with him on his creative language. He's verbal, and we're not sure what his neurological problem is, but he doesn't walk, he just creeps. So Sankalp, being a good organization, has lots of experiential things, classes, and he had made halwa in the morning. So I asked him for the recipe, and he gave it to me, saying that you put atta, flour, sugar, water, and ghee into it, and you'll get halwa. And I said, yuck, that is not the halwa, that would be a big mash. So then he looked at me and he said, very scornfully, and he said, you obviously have to roast the atta. Now, in Hindi, to roast is called chalana. So he said, aate ko chalana padega. So I said, chalana? Again, he looked at me and he said, not chalana like you, but chalana like me. And he's only 6. Can you imagine the way his mind was working and his play with language? Now, all this gets lost when we work with a child with special needs. Because primarily they do not have speech. And therefore, we are using a system which is, it doesn't happen to the deaf because they have a language of their own and, it's a completely different ballgame. Here we are trying to ape natural language. So obviously there's going to be some shortcomings, but so be it. The point is that as adults, as teachers, as professionals, and as therapists, we have to be aware there's a whole lot of rich area of language which is actually getting quite missed out. I'll show you another little slide. Could I have another, change the slide, please? I mean, next slide. Sujata, can we have the next slide? Here's playing with words. Here's this young girl who had gone to New York, and her teacher had said that I'm going to give you leave if you write a page every day on your experiences. She was all of 6th class, and she wrote, "The museum was boring. I did not like the museum." But one sec, I'll get the slide out. I did not like the museum. It is the biggest museum in the world. And my mummy liked it, and I liked the mummies. Look at the play of, I think it was a play of words on mummies. It could have been accident, I don't know. But if it wasn't, this is the sort of language maturity and language sophistication a child can have. Does our AAC attempt to provide it? I don't know. Now, I don't know whether the devices can provide it, actually. This is an activity which we as professionals have to do. And I hope at some point that, one could look at some strategies and see whether this might work. Now, some of the strategies that I have used in my work over here, which are very few. Next slide, please. And not really great strategies. Everybody knows about these. But just to say that if we free the child physically, as far as therapeutically possible, it would actually make a lot of difference. And OT worked on a walking frame and realized that movement actually facilitated initiation of communication. And that was a great thing. This happened in Brit School in California. Make creativity a part of your intervention program. Don't let it be an add-on or, in your spare time, so to speak. And give the child freedom to play, to do what he wants, and take it a step further, talk to him about it, and add it to the chart or form another page. And wait and follow the child's train of thought. Communicate in the mother tongue. It's, I know most devices all have language that can be translated. But do we introduce communication? Teach English by all means, but introduce communication in the mother tongue. It's at its best, and so is creativity. Why I'm saying introduce English, again, I was working with a child and we translated a whole book by Pratham. There's a small little book and it's a very simple book. It's about a newspaper and she translated it quite easily. But the last page, the word was drat, D-R-A-T. Now that's a tough word to translate. So then I said, okay, we'll say oof. The end is oof. She said, no, I'd like to keep the word drat. Well, fair enough. There was an English word in this completely Hindi-speaking child. So these are the little things that we need to keep in mind to make it. Communication is important, but it's also such a rich heritage to have for any child. And I wish we could give it to them. And that's why I was talking about this. Thank you so much. Next slide.
Thank you. Thank you, Rajul. It was such an interesting examples you had given, and absolutely every word what you said was true. And we have a lot of take-home points from your presentation. Thank you very much. There are lots of messages on the chat box too. Please go through that, Rajul. Now we go on to the next speaker, Dr. Namita Jacob. Dr. Namita Jacob is the Program Director of Chetna Charitable Trust that pioneers projects promoting access to good health and quality education for all. She's also the founding director of Enability, a not-for-profit company established to bring assistive technology at affordable prices. Dr. Jacob works as advisor with several national and international organizations in the areas of sensory impairments. She teaches a minor in assistive technology in Indian Institute of Technology, Chennai, and provides technical support in design of assistive devices. Her association with Vidya Sagar goes a long way back, and she was the person who was instrumental in establishing our Vision Center, and she mentors it. It's a pleasure to have you with us, Namita.
Thank you, Kalpana, and thank you, Raju, for really setting up in many ways so many of the things that perhaps I'll have an opportunity to address in this talk. Kalpana asked me if I would talk specifically about a group of children who have visual impairment, and many of you who are attending the meeting today, I do hope have received the YouTube video that we had made earlier, because it does form the basis of how we need to think about this topic. I'm going to turn off my video because my network is really terrible, so please excuse me for that. Kalpana asked me to speak about the role of partner and environment in communication, which is something I really feel strongly about. But also to focus on this group of children who are often really poorly understood. Children with visual impairment and additional disabilities, particularly children with cerebral palsy who may be blind or have low vision, and also children who are deaf, who also have visual impairment or blindness. This whole widely varied group, children with CPVI or children whom we simply call deaf-blind, hold within them such complexity. Complexity across so many things, because impairment, especially visual impairment, comes in so many different ways, hard to understand. For those who are not familiar with this topic, we say blind or visually impaired blindness, the idea that you have no or extremely poor vision, for example, just being able to see light or objects that block light, and visual impairment as a difficulty in seeing clearly or completely or processing visual information, meaning difficulty in understanding what our eyes are showing us. In our research in India, we've seen children with CP, about 60 to 65% will have some form of visual impairment. Blindness is much less, but visual impairment extremely common. And about 20% of those with hearing impairment also have visual impairment or blindness. And in this group, blindness often a lot more. Why this focus on vision? Kalpana should know more than anyone else, having headed the department of AAC for a long time. We have struggled to solve problems for this group, develop ways of communication that are truly effective and truly respectful of their capacity. Vision plays such an essential role in helping an infant make sense of his world. Our senses and our motor system together give us so many ways to get information about the social world. And when our senses are impaired, we, those of us who form partners, and those of us who form the social environment of the child, we need to understand how it is best replaced. What is the experiences that are truly lost to these children? Children come with certain biological potential. Hold on, sorry, one second. I'm realizing that my screen is not moving. Okay. Sorry, let me try to share that again. All right. Children come with biological potential and some universal biological capacity. This is why we have milestones. And whether you're born in Japan or Korea or India or the USA, we can expect certain things to develop around the same time. Some things are unique to that infant, their particular sets of talents, abilities, and certainly impairment. But that's not all, is it? There is also the environment in which they grow up, the culture in which they grow up, the activities they have access to, the interactions. And this is why in language, for example, babies growing up in Japan may say the first 50 words at the same time or around the same time as babies growing up in India or babies growing up in the USA. But what they say, what the content of their words is going to be different. We know Japanese babies, for example, speak a lot of emotion words. Indian babies, a lot of relationship words. And white American upper middle class family babies say a lot of naming words and description words. Why does that happen? Because so much of development happens because of your actual interaction, your actual exposure, your actual relationships. And this is what Raju was saying. The problem is not with the creativity of the child. The problem is the partner and what they decide to allow, what they happen to notice, what they choose to encourage. Communication is about partnership. So skills on only one side is not going to get anyone anywhere. And yet we often focus almost entirely on the babies. Whereas what we should really build is ourselves, our partner's skills, and our interaction. I think of a spider who produces the most perfect, powerful stream of silk. But its power can only take it that far. It can be fantastically skilled. It can send out this powerful gust. But unless the wind blows it right across the river, unless there's a tree on the other side, it's never going to reach all the way from the first step of its web. We need to be available to our children, to be the wind, to be the trees. We need this whole thing so that a web can actually be made complete. Caregiver skills for all babies in the context of communication. One of the big things that we need to think about is being in rhythm. Communication, this is one of the big milestones for infants. And we are lucky because infants are wired to engage with people, to show interest and preference for human voices, human faces, and their instinctive response to our attention, like seeking our eyes, reaching out to us, snuggling to human touch, immediately increases the chances of us prolonging our interactions with them. And early success motivates a caregiver to approach a baby, to sustain efforts, to stay engaged, while positive interaction keeps the baby interested, engaged, and slowly, these interactions can become more complex. Caregiver skills in the context of communication include being in rhythm with the baby. It's not easy, and so luckily for us, we come primed, both the infants and the adults, to make a connection, to perceive a response or an interest, and to give the right response to keep that interaction going. And we don't think so much before we change our voice, we bow down, come close to the kid. We don't think about these things, it just happens instinctively. And with each positive interaction, every positive feedback, that length of interaction and complexity of interaction grows. But when a child has an impairment, many of the things that we do instinctively are not effective, and particularly visual impairment can be very, very, very confusing. Partners need to learn how to slow down, pause, and really think what is going on from the child's perspective. In this image, you see a child pulling away from his mother, kicking at her, turning his face away, looking very disinterested. And yet, what you actually have is a child turning his head to listen carefully to her voice, reaching out with his toes excitedly to touch her, because he really doesn't have control. You can see his hands are fisted, but he can feel really well with his feet. If, as the partner, you get the message, you acknowledge it, you respond to it, and model the next level, show him another way to respond, another way to organize his body, that's when you help strengthen the communication and push the roots down deeper into language. Let's look at another key partner skill, ensuring that experiences are meaningful. For a child with VI and CP, or a child who is deafblind, voices are always all around them. But how do they know whether the person is actually there? When we talk to the child without actually touching the child, is there any other way for this baby to know who it is to connect with an actual presence? They may recognize your voice, but they still may not know that you exist right there next to them. Because at all times, voices appear and disappear without an interaction. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. And this is hugely confusing. Remember that vision allows you to see. So if you came into the baby's room and talked to somebody else, the child has a chance to see and understand why they hear your voice, know that you are present, but understand that the interaction is with someone else. They associate your voice close to them with you as an actual person. It's touch that bridges the gap. Touch is the sense that will tie it all together for the infant in the absence of vision or in the impairment of vision. But touch is really difficult. You need to learn how to give children a lot of time. This is even a child without CP. But if a child also had a motor impairment, it's multiplied by, I can't even imagine how much more. Because touch is like a really crowded street with thousands of things pushing for attention. That same touch is bringing you information about who the person is, that it is a person, the communication that you're having or giving through your hands, the emotion that you're transferring. All these things the child has to process. Not possible to do it all at once. So you need to slow down. You need to slow down, you need to wait, you need to allow the child to think. And when the child gives you the response, that's when you start to move to the next step of the interaction. For a child who is deafblind or has cerebral palsy and visual impairment, people and objects appear, disappear with no context, no warning. And the simplest caregiving action, from lifting, patting, hugging, changing a diaper, can feel like a surprise attack unless you find ways to give the child a heads up what's coming. So pacing is an essential partner skill. Giving the child time to process all the information so that what you say or sign, that makes sense to the child. And they can connect their experience to the words that you are using. A third partner skill is, what are you going to talk about? If you think of how we interact with babies, we talk to them about what we want to say, and then we give them the words about what they want to say, right? Don't we do that often for a child who's not yet verbal? We'd often speak for them. Oh, really? You're hungry? Oh, you want to come to mama? And then you become mom and you say, oh, come, let me pick you up, 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 up. So we are already modeling language. We are modeling for them what they want to say based on what they are doing or showing us they want to do. How does this work for a child with multiple disabilities, multiple sensory impairments? Let's think about how we represent complex concepts. If I look up a picture representation of the activity blowing bubbles, I get a lot of choices. If I'm considering only vision, I can say with color, without color, focus on all elements, focus on just the wand, the bubbles, the bottle. I can pick any of these things, and that's wonderful. But what is their actual experience of the activity? Let's think about a child with cerebral palsy and extremely low vision, able to see simple images when it's highlighted from the back. This is a very confusing group because they look capable when you put them in front of a device, they can see things, they can point to things. But in the real world out there, when everything is not backlit and nice and clearly highlighted for them, they miss most things. And the world is this murky, moving, colored, glittery thing. It's not easy for them to actually see things very clearly. So let's think of how a child may experience the activity from outside. Maybe one day, as a child is sitting outside with her family, the air fills with a smell, usually associated with having a bath. It smells like soap. And then there are these little touches of damp on her skin, and she thinks, I'm outside. Is it rain? Am I having a bath? What's happening? It's bubbles, people tell her. It's bubbles, that's bubbles. And Dad lifts her up so that she's there in the air, feeling the bubbles all around her, feeling them touch her, smelling them. But she's not wet like rain, she's not wet like a bath. And it's fun, she can feel that Dad is laughing and everyone's excited. It stops, and then suddenly there it starts again. Again, the smells, the dots of damp on her body, and Dad swinging her around. And let's say Dad takes her to meet her sister who's standing near there. And she can feel that her sister has something in her hands are wet, and she smells like she's just washed them. She's also laughing. Everyone's having lots of fun. So the child also laughs. Now, when she heads back inside, what are you going to put on her device? What are you going to talk to her about? What are the words you're going to use? What best represents this activity? Her experience would lead us to use words in our conversation like soap or the scent, the damp, the laugh. Your visual experience is shiny, round, glowing, floating, none of which she actually saw. So think of how you might want to describe things that actually represent her own experience, so that later she may recall this. Think of how you may want to actually represent it. So when she comes across that symbol again, she connects it conceptually with her experience. This kind of child who has enough vision to see things on a device or see things on a piece of paper well lit, but doesn't see so much outside, doesn't see so much in real life, comes across in a very, very confusing way. And we often see them as children with very empty language. The ability to answer questions, seem to know, but inside the concept is quite empty. Because our representation, what we've chosen, is often not connected to their actual experience. Our ability to enter the perspective of another is a key ability as adults with any child, with or without a disability. And particularly, if you have a child with a visual impairment and additional disabilities, you need to be able to understand how they may be experiencing the world. Think of how in normal childhood, how do we interact with children? A child throwing a tantrum, we see immediately whether it's because he's tired or whether because he's upset or whether he's just being bratty. And you modulate your response as an adult accordingly. This ability, understanding the intention, the experience, the motivation behind a child's behavior, understanding his way of experiencing an event and responding and modulating your response is really a very key partner skill that makes sure that your language is not empty. So how do we move beyond these early years? I'm with Raju. I think you need to trust that children hold within them this desire to connect, this grand enjoyment of the world, and find ways to mine that. We need to use routines, we need to use story, and we need to use play. These are the three founding ways in which children will learn because they give them joy, they are familiar, they are fun, they are comfortable, and these are the tools of any child's childhood and any child's normal way of learning. They form natural, comfortable, enjoyable rhythms that allow less skilled partners to join in and learn to develop their skill. It's not about always training the child, it's often about training people in their environment. Using deep and complete experiences and words that reflect their experience, we can now extend beyond their actual experience into symbolic ways of representation. So you can see here, if you've thoroughly explored a tree and have this concept that based on whatever sensory capacity you have, then when you feel a representation of a tree, you're able to make that connection. As long as you watch your child, you'll understand the kinds of words you begin with. Is it that they notice texture or smell? And from this, you can move forward. In our library, we create these books that capture words because this is something that we found. We tend to use the words that make sense to us, that fills us. As Raju said, the colors that we learned are the colors we share. If we are visual, we use visual language. But if we realize that in Tamil, for example, the number of ways in which we describe texture is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It's inconsistent across all of us. So how is it going to be used effectively? And so we insert it into stories, and then we give parents and teachers ideas in our storybooks on how they may bring it back and complete the circle. So you have a rich experience, you connect that rich experience to meaningful vocabulary, you connect that meaningful vocabulary to back, into a story or into a routine. You stretch beyond your routine, your story, back into your real life. In this way, you complete the circle and allow everything to sink in. We've spent now a lot of time working on developing a whole list of stories that cover a lot of the basic concepts that we know that we want to share with children. Not just words, but also emotions, ideas, all those things that we would want to fill our children with. We try to do them in multiple languages, and we do try to link them with many, little informative videos that you find on our YouTube. This is the final area I want to talk about. How do we give children concrete ways in which to express themselves? I'm with Raju. Again, little kids express themselves with or without wonderful language, with or without wonderful drawing skills or writing skills. And we celebrate it. We join in with them. We discuss things, we can make jokes. If a child, so on the left, you see my little niece who claims that she drew her dad. And I showed her this little toy of hers and said, "Oh, I thought that was your best friend." And she just laughed and laughed. And the two pictures that you see in front of her, the first one, this one is her dad. And then the second one, she looked at this little duck, which is her favorite. and drew it as well. And she gave this to me and said, I must hold on to it for the rest of my life because she wanted to remember this whole joke in this big story. We do these things with children. We take their ideas, they see ridiculousness and fun, and in this way, we develop the way they think, and we are able to expand both their minds as well as ours. You see the picture on the right. This is a picture drawn after a story was told. A hen's family eating cheese was the only idea the child left with was in that entire story was the hen and the cheese. And this is her representation of that drawing. And that's fine. It's up on the board because we love it so much. It makes no sense, but it was her expression and it gave her a way to tell us, to show us how she saw the story. How do we give our children these opportunities? We do different things. We create storybooks. This is a book called Possibilities, and we have now several, sometimes individual pages and sometimes entire stories, which are just textures arranged in different ways that we provide to children and ask them to use it to tell us anything, how they feel, which is, pick a character, anything. It's completely formless, but it's a way that allows children to use their innate, what they love and what they draw from the world in order to tell their stories, to participate with us, to add their characters in. And on here below, you see the game that we created called Tarikale, which is created with magnets that allow children free form to play by sticking these things up on the fridge, telling us stories, making their own pictures. This girl put this out and arranged it as a necklace, and is able to use this mixture of her sign language to explain to us her creation. This is the first time she's been able to create, and every day she can rearrange these things to do whatever she wants with it. So it's about finding ways to give children a way to create. And it's about developing our capacity to think beyond, to trust that all children hold this within them, not just the smart ones, not just when they learn ABCD. I remember this was one of my earliest lessons. I remember being given these children as a very young teacher who had such profound and complex disabilities. And they would ask me, at these little tiny fellows, deaf-blind with CP, all these combinations, and I would think to myself, I'm supposed to teach them Braille and words and spelling, and what is going on here? What are they even thinking? Why would I teach him Braille? How would he learn it? He doesn't know anything, doesn't understand anything. What is he going to do with it? But thank heavens, the people around me didn't have my doubts and pushed me to work this way. Many of these children today, they are adults. This year in January, I met this little boy, Raman. He's now in his, must be late 20s, early 30s. And this is Raman. And you'll see how beautifully now it is a part of his life. He still has, yes, he is deaf, yes, he is blind, yes, he has language issues, he has comprehension issues, he has a lot of behavior issues, he has sensory processing issues, name it, he probably has it all. And yet, look at the joy that he gets. He is able to read his little story, he's able to spell it and make sense of it. He uses his Braille device to send and receive very simple good morning messages, but this is the way he stays connected with his family, connected with his uncle who's not even present, his cousins who live elsewhere. Every day, this is what they do. It's part of his leisure, it's part of his communication. For me, when I look at whether we have given children a good language and communication environment, whether we've done a good job, how do we know this? It's not really in the vocabulary of the child. For me, it's when I see this, communication and language skills permeating their life. And when I see joy, in the child, in the person, and in the people around him in its use. So may we all develop these skills that we must have so that we don't limit the possibilities of children with complex sensory impairment. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Namita. That was a really a nice, very informative session. And I really wonder where you get those stunning visuals and to match your thought. That is because we didn't see the time also passing. It was really nice. Thank you very much. And now, yeah, thank you. Now we move on to the next speaker, Padma Shri Dr. Sudha Kaul. Dr. Sudha Kaul is a founder, trustee, vice chairperson of Indian Institute of Cerebral Palsy, Calcutta. Dr. Kaul has a PhD in Augmentative and Alternative Communication from Manchester Metropolitan University, UK. She has authored several books on AAC and presented papers on it in many national and international conferences. She has been the president of International Society for Augmentative and Alternative Communication, ISAC. Dr. Kaul is a fellow of ISAC and a recipient of several national and international awards. We are honored to have you with us, ma'am.
Thank you. Can you see me?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
I just want to say that Bhavna and Rajul and Namita have made such eloquent presentations and talked about the very essence of language and communication. It's so heartening to see these young people up there in the forefront. May I now request you to please play my video?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me to speak on this webinar on a subject very close to my heart. I have entitled my presentation Gupshup, Chit-Chat, Conversations, which I think is a good approach to augmenting AAC beyond classrooms. I will primarily focus on children and adults who have severe learning difficulties, and I will be discussing simple intervention strategies on how to augment communication in different environments, make some suggestions on how we can enable environments to support communication, and how we can build up a circle of communication partners. Communication, as you all know, is a powerful tool that helps us connect with each other, express what we really mean, and build better relationships. And in this picture, you see social communication in action between two AAC users, and you can certainly see them building relationships through AAC. Communicators can be of three kinds: emerging communicators like little infants and babies, context-based communicators, or independent communicators. I will be focusing primarily on context-based communicators. They are AAC users who communicate informally or non-symbolically. They don't use formal symbols such as speech or signs or written words. They communicate with their eyes, body language, facial expression, and behavior. And they rely on a communication partner to have their non-verbal expressions acknowledged, interpreted, and acted upon. And they require support to understand their communication. Janice Light has come up with 4 domains when she talks about communicative competence in AAC users: linguistic, operational, social, and strategic. By linguistic competence, we mean an AAC user's mastery over their linguistic code and mastery over their AAC system, low-tech or high-tech. By operational competence, we mean AAC users' physical and cognitive ability to access and operate their AAC system. And by social competence, we're talking about social linguistic skills and interaction and social relational skills. And by strategic competence, we're talking about using compensatory strategies to communicate more effectively. Janice has come up with a very important point when she highlights that communicative competence suggests an adequate level of communication skills to function within an environment. It does not imply total mastery of the art of communication. And for all of us in this field, I think it's important for us to remember that we are talking about an adequate level of communication skill and not mastery. So communication competence is actually affected by many things. Family dynamics, the communication partners, opportunities and experiences the AAC user has, and respecting and acknowledging that each AAC user has individual differences, and believing that social closeness and building relationship is very important. The quality of the communication interaction is also dependent on two people because communication is a two-way process. So we're looking at communication competence of both the speaker and the listener. The communication skills, discourse strategies, or linguistic abilities of the partner as well. And how many opportunities have they shared between each other, and how many opportunities have been given by the communication partner to each other. So in building AAC Gupshup communities, there are a few things we need to just keep in mind. One, we have to build up conversational skills. We have to build up linguistic skills in our AAC user. And we can do this by planning activities which are related to their daily routines that they are familiar with. And based on this, we can work out individual goals. But remember that the level of participation for each AAC user will be different. So if you're talking about activities and routines, it could be in home and school, it could be at the adult day center, vocational training, community activities, and we have to select vocabulary that is relevant to the situation, and we have to select vocabulary that we can represent and organize in a manner that the AAC user understands. So for the AAC user, we then need to go on to select an appropriate AAC aid to meet his or her needs. And this could be a communication display, a board, a Gupshup book, message cards, voice output devices, pre-recorded messages on a tablet like a Kothamala, and many others. But very important, we also need to write down suggestions for communication partners, particularly those who are not familiar with the AAC user. We have a triple AAC group in IICP, and these are youngsters who are AAC users and trainers, and they have come up with responsibility of the partner facilitator, which I'd like to share with you. There should be a good understanding between AAC user and the partner. The facilitator needs to have the opportunity of working with many AAC users to develop their patience and skills in communicating with non-speaking people. They should plan vocabulary for each routine to meet the AAC individual users' individual communication needs, adding pictures, symbols, words wherever required. They should know how to represent the vocabulary, and if you're introducing a newly formatted board, they need to practice and be familiar with it. And very importantly, they need to update vocabulary regularly to meet changing needs. Now, to do this in IICP, we have worked out an AAC intervention model, which I have termed SPICES. You might wonder why it's such a strange name. Well, AAC seems to be very complex for most people. So I thought I would come up with a simple word which is understood by people across the country. We all love food, whether we come from Kanyakumari, Kashmir, or Tamil Nadu. And we all are aware of our specific spices that our parents have used, we use, our children use in their food. So, spices are some principles for alternate communication for you to consider. The letter S stands for the word Swikriti in Sanskrit, or Swikar, which is acceptance. And this is very, very important because we need to accept the fact that our potential AAC user has a different way of communicating. But we also need to believe that he has every right to communicate and that he can. And therefore, we need to be sensitive to the situation in which the AAC user will be communicating. And to do this, we need to have a person-centered approach, because as you're all aware, communication is very personal. To do this, we need partners who can be parents and professionals and others, because we're all working towards one goal: inclusion. Inclusion of our AAC user in day-to-day activities in his daily life. And this will be based on his individual abilities and also his needs. And to do this, we need to examine his communicative competence and his communication needs. These will be influenced by cultural factors, and therefore we need to create opportunities for learning and participating. Participating in different environments. We have to know about different environmental experiences that our AAC user has, and what are the expectations of the partners, and what are the barriers that he may face. And therefore we need to enable environmental experiences of the AAC user, and we need to encourage through interprofessional teamwork. You will notice I have not used the word interdisciplinary. I have used the word professional very loosely, because in communication we go beyond categories. We're talking about all people. Based on the SPICE, we come to solutions and strategies. We may decide to use a combination of high and low-tech methods to meet the individual needs of our AAC user and to meet the challenges he or she may face. And we can do this by sharing knowledge and accepting roles and responsibilities of the group of people who are going to be the communication partners. And we can only do this by being pragmatic in our approach. So these are the principles we keep in mind when we work on an AAC intervention program. I'd like to now share with you some partnership, some gupshup partners between families and persons with disability in the community and professionals. The first child I'd like to talk about is Ankush. This is Ankush sitting in class with his teacher and his mom. And the other picture is Ankush with his communication board sitting with mom at home. Using the SPICE model as the framework, let's look at what Ankush does. Ankush is a 7-year-old expressive boy with cerebral palsy and learning difficulties. He's a student of the EDU. He has a very supportive family of parents, grandparents, and uncle and aunt. He converses with his grandparents in video calls, pointing to his board, and also speaks few words. The situation that the mother decided to talk about was visiting his grandparents for Kali Puja or Diwali. So the partner in this context were his family members. What are Ankush's ability and needs? Ankush uses a modified wheelchair with a cutout tray, foot strap and lap strap. At home he sits on a floor and also has a straight back padded wooden chair with a cutout tray. When he joined, he could only speak very few words and has slurred speech. He was introduced to a picture communication board, and in a short time, he has learned to use the AAC system very well. He can identify some common objects, action pictures, identify primary colors, and has some pre-number skills. So, based on this, we chalked out his communication competencies, and we found that in terms of his linguistic competence, he can follow 2-step commands in Bengali and simple instructions. He uses 3-4 words to communicate his thought and need through his communication boards, and he can make choices. To operate and use his communication system, he needs adapted seating to enable him to be more independent and functional. In terms of his social competence, if there is a person of preference, he vocalizes and calls for attention. He can initiate a conversation with familiar people. He can give information when asked, and he voluntarily greets his teachers and peers. And in terms of strategic competence, he needs support in using his communication system. So since the environment is the grandparents' home, we know that the home was conducive to Ankush's visit. So what was the mother going to do to enable the environment? Mother gave grandparents some suggestions on how to give opportunities to Ankush to chat with them. What were the strategies that she worked on? She planned a picture communication message board with Ankush. He would carry his Gupshup book with the 4 picture messages to his grandparents' house. His dadu on cue would ask, "Do you want to tell me something?" And mother would open the Gupshup book and ask, "What do you want to tell dadu?" The parent would then direct the attention, Ankush's attention, to the messages on the page, and Ankush would select his message with mother's help. So this is what Ankush's Gupshup books looks like. And these are the messages he conveyed to his grandparents. I want to go to Kali temple. I don't want to burst crackers. I want to eat laddus and bhai phota or bhaiya dooj. And I want to give grandmother a gift. The next young lady I'd like to introduce you to is Dipti. Dipti is 22-year-old with a keen interest in the world around her, loves Hindi movies and music and dressing up. She has cerebral palsy and learning difficulties. She enjoys being with familiar people. And the situation chosen by her mother was visiting a local shop to buy nail polish. So in this context and situation, the partners are mother and shopkeeper. Let's look at Dipti's individual abilities and needs. She has good head control. She can access things placed on the lap tray with right hand index and middle finger. She can sit on an adapted wheelchair with insert in a lap tray. She reacts to familiar and unfamiliar people. Loves to greet people with a smile. Recognizes 2x2 pictures, so she has 4 pictures on a page of familiar people and familiar objects she enjoys using. She will point to the pictures in the book and can form 3-word messages with help. And she can use a voice output device to give pre-recorded messages. So in terms of her linguistic competence, she knows names of family members, teachers, carers, objects she uses in her daily life, names of her favorite things to eat, names of makeup, etc. So she has quite a good vocabulary. In terms of her operational competence, while seated in a personally designed chair, she can access her computer board or her tablet. She has all the basic social linguistic skills, but in terms of strategic competence, she still needs support from her partners. So here the local shop was going to be the environment that we needed to enable, because the local shop was inaccessible for a wheelchair user. So the mom requested the shopkeeper to make a removable wooden ramp so that Dipti could be wheeled into the shop. She visited the shop to see if there were any access barriers, and I'll mention she found there were. She also spoke to the shopkeeper to suggest a time when she could bring Dipti, because she wanted the shopkeeper to give some time to listen to Dipti, who would like to personally buy something from the shop. At home, mother discussed the shop visit with Dipti. They together planned the messages she wanted to convey. Mother made a simple communication display with pictures on what she wanted to buy. Organized pictures of nail polish, bottle and 2 colors that Dipti liked. Recorded the message on a Samsung tablet. And Dipti practiced pointing at messages at home before she set off to the shop. And these were the messages that Dipti recorded on her tablet. I want to buy, and she would decide whether it was a lipstick or nail polish. And then again, she would decide I like blue or pink color. And if she wanted to, she may have say, show me more shades. I'll take this. And what is the price? And a thank you at the end. The next youngster I'd like to talk about is Arjun. Arjun is a 51-year-old sociable gentleman attending ADC, our Adult Day Center. He has cerebral palsy with profound multiple learning disabilities. He is non-speaking, but he communicates very effectively through non-verbal methods. The situation is home during the pandemic time, and selecting a favorite videos to watch on the TV. The partners are people at home, so it's parents and caregivers. and teaches at the ADC. So what are his individual ability and needs? Arjun is mobile. He has good hand function and can eat independently, but he needs help for other daily living activities. He can clearly indicate his likes and dislikes non-verbally. He communicates using personalized signs that he has been taught as a young student in IICP, and thereafter he has developed many communication gestures, but these are understood only by familiar partners. He recognizes familiar objects and events, has excellent associative memory for events, routines, and people too, and has been given a book, Gupshup book, a communication passport, a dictionary, but needs prompting to use it. He needs to control his unwanted behavior like banging his head when he is angry or calling for attention. So in terms of his communication competence, he knows the names of familiar people, objects in his environment and can follow two-stage commands. He can pick up an object to indicate wants, and he can walk short distance that he wants, but he needs help in maneuvering steps. In terms of social competence, he's a context-based communicator, can initiate a conversation by going to the person or looking at them and walking off when he wants to close the conversation. He has good interactional skills that are all through non-verbal modes. In terms of strategic competence, he needs support in using his Gupshup book or his communication passport. So what was the environment we needed to enable? It was the home. The ADC teacher sent a video message with all his favorite teachers on WhatsApp. The mother had to ensure that this video was loaded on the laptop so that it could be cast on the TV. So what were the strategies? Arjun clearly did not want to watch the video on the phone or laptop. He wanted it on the big screen. So he found his own solution. Arjun told his mother what to do. He handed over the TV remote to his mother to indicate he wanted to see the video on the TV. And there you have a picture of, a still picture of his favorite teacher saying hello to him and Arjun enjoying watching TV. And we have a communication dictionary for him and others like him, where the list of activities that they do in ADC are listed, which they enjoy doing. Now, for all this, it might be a good idea for you to create an AAC toolbox, because communicators vary in their level of understanding of symbolic representations, from real objects to photos of real objects to concrete line drawings to representation of objects, abstract symbols, etc. And therefore, an AAC toolbox can offer different combination of these representation systems. You can have, as I mentioned earlier, pictures, graphic pictures, because we all know that pictures, message card, photos can talk. You can have a communication board, and here you see one with a communication symbol system called Indian Picture Symbols for Communication, which we have devised in IICP. The toolbox can have low-tech, high-tech devices like tablet or a one-step message or a Kathamala. And you can have resources also available so people know where they can reach out and get information. So to sum up, what did we do and how did we build up this AAC community? By being sensitive to each of the situations I mentioned, but being pragmatic and accepting what is possible and what is impossible, what we can change and what we can't. By acknowledging that each one of our communication users had differences in their knowledge, in their perception, and attitudes of their parents and potential facilitators. And therefore, we worked as a team to support the AAC user. We recognized and respected the individual interests and needs and challenges of the AAC user. We acknowledged that each one of them had certain level of communication skills, and we built up on these competencies. And keeping in mind environmental consideration and possible barriers, we tried to enable changes. And we did this by using support systems and solutions that were sensitive and acceptable to the person using AAC, and created a learning environment that is both opportunity-based as well as inclusive. So be a Gupshup partner, because in life, it's not where you go, it's who you travel with. And before I end, I would just like to thank and acknowledge parents and students and staff who have shared their case studies and information with me, and in particular Shati and Madhumita from the National Resource Center for AAC. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. That was a fascinating session with so many case studies and well explained. We were able to see that Spices model is very good. We will think about it. Lots of practitioners can actually, think about it and see how it can be practiced.
Just before I end, I'd just like to say that what's come through very clearly in all the presentations is that the teacher is not the parent or the practitioners, it's the AAC users. And I think that's a message we should all take home. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. That was absolutely fantastic session we had with Rajul, Namita and Sudha ma'am opening up many thoughts for us about thinking about, the creating routine or experiences, creative language, really taking us towards, and everybody who is watching this webinar will start thinking about many things to be put in place. And as Sudha ma'am said, yes, the AAC user will be the focus of the entire thing. Now we move on to the next session. We'll have Malini Chip, an AAC user presenting right now. Malini Chip, Sujata, can you please spotlight Malini and Ushaka?
Yes.
Malini Chib is a trustee at Adapt Mumbai. She is an author of the book One Little Finger. She is also an advisor at Tata Sons Diversity and Inclusion Team. Malini has 2 master's degrees in Women's Studies from Institute of Education, University of London, and a second master's in Information Management from London Metropolitan University. He conducts empowerment and sensitization courses for individuals, corporate, parents, professionals. Welcome. She does a lot of lectures nationally and internationally. Welcome, Malini. I also introduce Mrs. Usha Ramakrishnan, who will be voicing Malini's presentation. Mrs. Usha Ramakrishnan was our former chairperson of Vidya Sagar, and she is also the board member at Adapt Mumbai. Usha Ramakrishnan is an educationist and an expert in the field of emotional intelligence and multiple intelligences. She has been working for over 3 decades with children, adults, and families to enable potential. Welcome, Ushaka, and thank you for accepting to read out Malini's thoughts. Over to you, Malini.
Can you please unmute yourself, Malini?
Okay. Okay. How are
Yeah.
Hello.
Yes. Hello. Yeah, we can hear you, Malini. Thank you, Malini. Thank you. I can think, I can feel, I can speak differently. Communication falls into the same category as food, drink, and shelter. It is essential for life, and without it, life becomes worthless. My main difficulty has been my communication. Not being able to communicate leads to isolation and depression. This disempowers one. However, with alternate means of communication, I managed 2 masters from London and being employed in both London in Tata Consultancy Services and joining Tata Sons Bombay House. This is at Oxford Brookes University. And while doing MA Gender Studies in the Institute of Education, University of London at UK. But the journey was tough. It was arduous. It was challenging. Barriers throughout preventing me from attaining my goals. At the time of my birth, knowledge about disability was rare. India was bleak. The doctors truly believed nothing could be done for me. India was certainly not ready for my arrival. It was a lonely existence with no friends, no interaction with children of my age, no birthday parties, and above all, there were no schools for me. To begin treatment, I went to a hospital dealing with children for diagnosis and treatment. I hated the whole experience. They spoke about me in front of me, but not to me. The therapists at the hospital treated me as if I was a non-thinking person. I was just a patient to them with no feelings or character of my own, which upset me. Long, long ago, on a manual typewriter, when I was only 7, it's a broad-based keyboard was used. When people first see me and hear my garbled speech, they think I've come from some outer space. Some people will try and understand my speech, but some people will get so nervous they want an interpreter or my Toby Churchill light writer. Here's the Toby Churchill light writer. Education is not only about academic work, it's also exposure. It's about socializing and meeting, making new friends and doing different activities, being included. Yearning for more knowledge, I joined the Institute of Education for my master's in gender studies. Subsequently, I did my second master's in information management. I was slow. It took me 4 years, but I did it. My empowerment began with 2 things, the electric wheelchair and my communication voice box. Because of my electric wheelchair, soon I started accessing the buses on my own. I was euphoric. Traveling by bus alone was terrific. Traveling by bus did not need any speech. You just press a button when you want to stop. In London, my lecturers were hugely accepting of me and spent much time over assignments and seminars so that I truly participated. I wanted to be in contact with my friends all this time. All of them had mobiles and they were SMSing each other all the time. I felt left out. Nobody thought I would be able to use the mobile phone. I found the computer and Windows software easy to use, and I learned how to quickly access my email. The email technology revolutionized my life. I was able to communicate on my own. The internet disclosed a whole new world to me. I could read the paper online, could search for jobs, or look at disability conferences online. This is in Sorbonne, lecturing with 2 interpreters, one in English and the other in French. My first book. One Little Finger made a huge impact to those who had similar problems. Basically, I am a writer and author. I transmit knowledge through the power of the pen with that one little finger. I also love meeting and interacting with different people. My one small finger has not let me down. I have become quite adept and fast in writing. I am for the first time able to accept my own identity as a disabled woman, and I'm proud to be one. I have used the one little finger 250,000 times. Positive attitudes play an important part in formulating a disabled person's identity. I'm proud to be disabled. I've learned about my importance of my mind over the body and of the spiritual over the physical. Looking back at the first job as an event manager at Oxford Bookshop, Bombay, the communication disorder did not come in the way. It was unbelievable. Even I was surprised. My boss was so progressive. I had to collect a crowd every week around a book launch, and through emails, and follow up with my secretary, Teresa. I collect each time a dignitary 70 to 100 people of consequence, so there was good interaction and participation. Of course, I went for an interview and all the questions were directed at me. This was the first time in India that a person unknown to me who was not connected to disability addressed questions to me and understood me with my Toby Churchill upgraded light-writer. I got the job. With the opportunities I was given, combined with my ability to adjust, I found I am employable. In my first job, I was the senior event manager at the APJ Group's Oxford bookstore. Being an event manager means that one has to contact people and interact constantly with them. You need your communicator and an interpreter. In both TCS London and here in Tata Sons Bombay, access was there. In London, I use public transport, which is fully accessible. Wheelchair people have the right of way. My next jobs were far more challenging in TCS London and currently in Tata Sons Bombay House. In TCS, there was an interview process. I got the job as a diversity officer. In the offices itself, I was treated with dignity and respect. All members of my team, both in London and Bombay, were hugely aware of my strength and contribution. Jenny was my immediate boss and Nupur Malik was the head of HR. Nupur made it a point to look at my abilities. Jenny helped me step by step until I understood what I had to do. And then she left me to do it independently. This did a great deal to my confidence level. I had done a master's in IT, but Jenny taught me how to use that knowledge effectively. Writing a weekly blog, which I did on my experiences in London as a disabled woman, I used the social media extensively. I also had to organize an event every 6 weeks. I had to market the event, draw enough crowd, put up posters, and make sure that the event was well publicized. With a lot of follow-up, reminder emails, I worked on a large crowd. Sometimes I called people for a lunch meeting in various restaurants where we talked about TCS. The topics were women in the workplace and the empowerment of women. Our team also did regular training sessions for the TCS employees. I did quite a few sessions on how to behave with a disabled employee. Language, manners, and etiquette on medical and social model of disability. We even tried to organize talks, handouts, one-hour seminars, just to make sure the men understood that we had a brain and could understand everything. Widening the scope. I recently conducted a sensitization webinar for over 300 people and hope to make this a regular event. A blog is another way of increasing awareness, and we are beginning this under the One Little Finger department. My boss, a woman Nupur Malik, relocated to Bombay and was made head of the HR group Tata Sons. I applied. I got a call from her office inviting me for an interview. When I met her, she gave me the job as a member of the HR team of Tata Sons. My colleagues at Tata Sons. I'm fortunate I'm in a company which is so forward-looking with hugely enlightened colleagues. I pay a tribute to their vision and their relentless pursuit of service to humanity and contribution to India and accepting diversity. I hope I too can contribute in my small and incremental way. I have numerous friends online. I chat with them all over the world. On Facebook, Orkut, and Skype has made the globe smaller. I began to feel less isolated as I could communicate with anyone now. My power of communication has increased substantially with this kind of intervention provided by my parents and also my competence in the use of the internet and the mobile. With the use of the internet and email, chatting online, texting, through giving lectures at the institutes of education in London, at Sorbonne, Paris, and all over India, I was not dumb, although I may look. At every stage I was asked. I may seem docile, but I was given options to choose from. Now I play Scrabble with people through Scrabulous, which I have discovered on the computer all over the world. I wait for a word to be completed from Morocco, move on to a word being completed in Los Angeles, and then swiftly on to Sweden. The online chat facility has aided and empowered me tremendously. Although the internet is my voice, I use the chat facilities. Actually, the internet is my voice. I use the chat facilities to discuss about work, and I managed to keep down the job for one. I use the chat modem of communication to talk and socialize constantly. The chat facility was a vital tool for my development, and it gave me more confidence in articulating myself. With a job, one feels worthwhile, one is productive and contributes to society, one gets recognized and accepted, one can become financially independent, one has an opportunity to develop a social life. Why are attitudes important? They form an integral part of one's identity. Attitudes build one's self-esteem. Society would like everyone to conform to the norm. The only disability in life is a bad attitude. Scott Hamilton. Whether it was doing an MA or getting into Tata Sons, the choice was mine. But my mother was the rock behind my body and soul, and she who relentlessly and tirelessly worked, sacrificing her time. I salute her with gratitude. What lies behind us and what lies before us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us. Emerson. Life is beautiful. It's a tear and a smile. It's about having fun and comradeship. It's about laughing, teasing, having arguments, to be a part of the buzz of human interaction which helps one emotionally. We cannot all be stars, but we can twinkle and be a part of the universal design. Malini?
Thank you all for giving. Thank you.
Thank you all. I thank each and every one working in this area of darkness. And despite this, we will shine. And with your help, we will not feel we are alone in our mission to be somebody's.
Wow, that was a fantastic presentation, Malini, and really a wonderful journey, and the way you put forward about your experiences in workplace, it was really fantastic. Thank you very much. And in fact, actually, with Malini's presentation, we are moving towards assistive technology. So this session, we had the first session is over. Now the second session is on assistive technology. And Malini has actually rightly put forth how AAC and AT go hand in hand. And now we start our presentations with Professor Anil Prabhakar. Professor Anil Prabhakar is a faculty at the Department of Electrical Engineering, IIT Chennai. He is currently the director of Yali Mobility and Enability Foundation for Rehabilitation Companies that focus on rehabilitation engineering. Enability focuses on production and distribution of assistive technology to the end users by engaging with schools and NGOs. Yali Mobility is an IIT Madras incubated company that focuses on delivering affordable solutions for persons with locomotor disabilities. He is also the founder trustee of Chetna Charitable Trust. Vidya Sagar has had a long and enriching relationship with Professor Anil Prabhakar, and most of our assistive devices like Aditi, which Bhavna used, all of them are part of IIT Chennai and Anil's involvement in that. We welcome Anil to share his thoughts as a developer. Suja, is Anil there?
Yes, he's here.
Yeah.
So, but we can't hear you yet.
Whom are you saying?
To Mr. Anil. No.
Tell Anil he can't hear him.
Yeah.
Anil, we can't hear you.
Can you
Please
check your mic
unmute.
settings if it's the same as your headset that you're wearing? Okay, I think he's checking it. Okay, he's just rejoining. Oh, we still can't hear you. Maybe you can try without your headset. Would that work?
No, that won't work. Oh. All right. Am I audible now?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Oh, perfect. All right. You need, so despite what everybody says, you always need a non-engineer to make something work. All right. Screen. Okay. Screen visible?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So let me start by describing what I'm hoping to talk about today. It's about taking assistive devices from products to from prototype to product, and that's a sort of journey that we have learned how to do. And I use two vehicles to do them. One of them is, of course, IIT Madras, where I'm an employee in the Department of Electrical Engineering. And I'm part of the Center for Rehabilitation Engineering and Assistive Technology. So you can find more details at create.iitm.ac.in. And the second one is Enability, and its website is enability.in. The idea of course, using Create was meant manifold, but it's a nice acronym. And we use Create as a vehicle to create an inclusive society. So every individual has a right to communication, education, employment, and recreation. I find a lot of people don't believe in recreation. We like to study a lot, but I always emphasize that we should also have fun doing the things we do. IIT Madras has also joined an Inclusive University Alliance, the IUA, which is a recent coming together of a group of like-minded universities for higher education, so that we can make higher education accessible. We also now have a resource center for assistive technology in IIT Madras, where we try to support the academic activities of our students. Coming to the main topic of building AAC solutions, the idea is to provide independence through communication. Often users are at a disadvantage. They may be non-verbal, they may have impaired mobility, they may have visual impairments. So when we design AAC solutions, we want to make all the product development user-centric. So we build teams around the users. So the center is a user, and you could have caregivers, rehab workers, you could have academics like myself, you could have industry partners, there are schools, doctors. The idea is you do need the support of this entire team around the user to have a successful AAC solution. I'll give you an example from our own journey. Our journey began 15 years ago, December 2005. I do not know if people remember this. Kalpana and Bhavna were still there at the Silent Revolution. And it was a revolution. At the end of that workshop, there was a simple question that was posed: how can we help Bhavna communicate independently? And we did that eventually through three solutions. One was a software called Hope, and then there were switches called Aditi, and then there was a hardware called Kavi. So we realized that it wasn't just about any one aspect. You needed a whole ecosystem, and it was easier to do it using computers. And computers meant we had to make computers accessible through switches. We had to have software, and of course, it would be nice if it was portable and you didn't have to lug around this huge desktop. So you needed embedded devices, which we had called Kavi. I'll focus a bit on the making of Aditi. 2005 December was the Silent Revolution. In 2007, 2 years later, we had the first switch, and it was this clunky looking thing with sharp edges. It was 3 years later that we had something that was more robust, and finally in 2013 we had something that we could call a product. So it took us almost 6 years, from 2007 to 2013, iterating with help from different institutions: IIT Madras, Vidya, Sagar, Chetna, Mindtree Foundation, Co-Innovate Technologies, all coming together to make a simple access switch. And I think that is part of the journey. I also highlight the price point out here. We priced it at 750 rupees or about $12 at that time. And if you try to maintain that price point, you'll realize that it becomes a bit of a challenge. Today, Aditi has gone wireless. It uses ultrasound proximity sensors with Bluetooth. Now, of course, when you do these things, when you add these features, there's a cost involved, right? And we will talk a little more about how we manage the cost of AAC solutions. Before I do that, I will show you a few more examples. So here, for example, you have other access switches. These are simple finger switch and smiley ball. These act as a left click of the mouse. This was developed by Mindtree Foundation and transferred over to us so that we could take it to market. So it's not necessary that we do all the work. There are other people who also have good ideas, and our role is sort of to take it from prototype to product. These are switches which are single-user switches. We also have double switches, dual touchpads, which act for gaming systems. So if two people want to play games, then you can actually use vPlay for that. So the idea is to keep building on each device until we satisfy more and more needs. So although we started with just one user, Bhavna, I think although we focused on finding a solution for her, eventually we have built an ecosystem that we can find solutions for many people. So that was the story of access switches. What about the hardware itself? We called it CAVI. We called it Communicating Audio Visual Interface. It was a mobile embedded platform. This was 2007. Please remember, 2007, there were no tablets, there was no iPad. Okay, and this was one of the early prototypes that we built out, and it ran a software called Hope. The challenge that we were trying to tackle out there is to give you a 3-hour battery backup that is necessary for classroom use. Our classrooms don't have plug points, or did not have plug points at that time. To make it wheelchair mountable, to have text-to-speech available, to have stereo channels, dual audio channels, to have a robust mechanical design. A lot of these challenges today have been resolved with the advent of a tablet, but a lot of them still remain. So, for example, if you were to try to run the audio on a low-cost tablet for 3 hours, it will probably not work very much because the battery will die out. So if you look at our history again, it started with 2007 was the first prototype. 2010, we had something. 2011, we improved on that. By 2012, the tablets came out. There was a Micromax Fun Book. And by 2014, we had mobile phone revolution, and everything was being done on mobile. Now, mobile phones are nice, and everybody thinks they can do a lot of things. But if you are a person who has visual impairment, then a mobile phone screen is not very useful. If you are a person who has motor impairment, then you cannot access the information on a mobile phone very easily because they expect you to be able to have fine motor skills and navigate it. So there are still challenges in using some of these embedded platforms. If you look at software in terms of picture to speech, when we developed CAVI PTS, the first version was 2014. And today in 2019, we have gone up to version 3.5. And I'm giving you this timeline to say that nothing is stationary. Everything keeps changing, everything keeps improving. There are new features added. In CAVI PTS, we have added multiple languages. We have languages all across India. We also have languages in Southeast Asia. So CAVI PTS has its own ecosystem. But we can build on that ecosystem but with a suite of products. So today we have CAVI Plus, which is accessible through the website itself. You can go to any browser and run kavi.enability.in. We have games, CAVI games that are being released. And of course, CAVI PTS remains accessible through the Google Play Store for anybody who has an Android phone. But is that all that we can do with this? Once we have developed a platform where we have all kinds of neat features. So for example, out here is an example where you're highlighting a picture and it will scroll automatically as the software runs. And it's a single click feature so that if you could just use the finger switch, you could select any picture. Similarly, on the right, you have crosshair. So these are features that people have developed and we have incorporated into our software. Can we do better than just Kavi? Here is an example of where we expanded Kavi. Twin Twigs is a business run by Sundaram and Sriram. And they came to us with a requirement that they be allowed to generate invoices. And since we already had Kavi, we built this entire billing capability on Kavi PTS. So today they can generate their own invoices, they can add images of their products and run an independent business. So this is an example of where you take one AAC solution and then you expand it out into something else. So we started with the silent revolution in 2005. And I call this slide evolution from revolution. Because what that has done is actually it has helped us expand our ecosystem. We bring in new partners. What we can do, we do ourselves. What we cannot do, we look for partners who help us do it. On the top, you had Silent Revolution, and then in 2009, we had the INA ISAC National Conference, and then we started the national conferences called Empower in 2018. So what were we doing for 9 years? We were figuring things out. We were like, how do you do this? And the mobile tablets came in sometime around 2012. The other timeline that is interesting for me is on the bottom, which is in 2007, we developed Kavi, Hope, and Aditi. The fourth out Invention Lab that goes on its way to market Awas. In 2015, Aditi patent is granted. Notice the timeline, it's 8 years before a patent is granted. Then in 2015, we incubate Enability Foundation and release Kavi PTS version 1. So it is interesting, why did we need to incorporate a foundation? Well, it turns out that nobody wanted the risk associated with releasing the software, and so we took it on ourselves and said we will do that. Having done that, we now in the position where into 2019 we were able to incubate another company to make wheelchair accessible electric vehicles, Yali Mobility. And now we are working on Kavi Plus and Kavi T. The hardware and software and the needs of the users keep evolving. So it's not a revolution. I mean, you start off with a revolution, but after that, it's a hard work. You actually have to keep evolving. If you think of it from the perspective of a product, a lot of people will think of products in terms of disabilities, ADHD, autism, low vision, intellectual impairments, and that classification is typical, but it's not really useful for us. Instead, I prefer to think of it as a product matrix, where a product serves a functional need. So it could be the communication, education, employment, mobility, or leisure. We want the products to serve more than one need, and that is how we grow our customer base. One question that people always ask me is, why does it take time? And to explain that to you, I want you to understand product development. Right? As a developer, we have to balance constraints. If you think of a phone, a mobile phone, when we started, we had 2G connectivity, 3G connectivity, and today 4G connectivity. And each time, the capacity of the battery had to increase in order to allow you to have 4G connectivity. So your 2G phones would last forever. The old Nokia phones would last forever. But today's smartphones keep dying and they needed to be recharged. Along with the battery capacity, if you increase it, the weight of the device would increase. So the user wants a lightweight device with a large battery. How do you balance it out? So there are customer requirements and there are technical requirements, and we have to balance those two things out. And the way we do that is through this diagram called a house of quality. So you can look up how the house of quality is built. It's a very good management tool that is used, and in fact, it was propagated by Toyota, and they saved a lot of money in their company by first designing it using the house of quality before trying to actually go into product. The next aspect that we should focus on is the cost. The final cost of a product has many components. There is intellectual property, there is product design, there is sales, there is training. You take any product, I mean, you take a bottle of water. The actual cost of that bottle of water is maybe 1/5 of what they sell it to you for. And why is that? It's because they're putting in the cost of all these other things around the cost, into the cost itself before they give it to you. Now, in our domain, it's impossible to pass on the cost of all of these things back to the user. So instead, what we do is we break it up. We allow the intellectual property to be generated by institutional partners like IIT Madras. We use funding from government grants and CSR to do product design. We allow companies or foundations like Enability to take up the sales and marketing. And then the training, which in most other products is a small component, out here it's a large component, and we use organizations like Vidya, Sagar or NIPMED to help us with the training. Remember, an AAC device is not a bottle of water. I mean, you could just drink a bottle of water, but an AAC device requires training, and it requires repeated amounts of training, and that increases the cost. We now look at the idea of product adoption. So let's say you've built your first AAC device and you're very thrilled about it and you're very kicked about it. You're actually an innovator. This is us. We are all very happy with our idea. And then there are the early adopters. And then there's this big chasm where you find that people don't want to cross. Right? Before the early majority adopt your product, you have this chasm. And the only way you'll do that is you have partners who help you bridge the chasm. Successful products is after you cross this. Right? So is Aditi a successful product? I'm not so sure. I think we're still with the early adopters, right? We have not really gone out and made it a successful product the way you think of any other successful product, like I don't know, a mobile phone. Right? Dr. Namita Jacob often tells me that it's not sufficient to have good intentions. I think that's correct, right? As innovators, we are stuck out here with good intentions, and to build a product, you actually have to understand design and product cycle and the constraints that go with it. So let me summarize my talk by saying this. I go back to this circle and say that the user-centric design is what we need to do. Right? AAC devices are fun and easy to build. Honestly, as a faculty at IIT Madras, I can ask any number of students to build AAC devices, and they will all come up with prototypes that solve small things. But taking it to a product is a challenge, because you then have to worry about cost, you have to worry about training of the users. And both those things are not something that academics or inventors are good at. So we need to have partners. But at the end of the day, if you do meet a need, I think you're successful. So if you solve the problem for one person, I think you're successful. And I encourage everybody to solve that one problem and then pass it on to somebody else who's better equipped at taking your idea and converting it into a product. You may have the world's best idea, but you may not be the world's best person to take it from prototype to product, and that is where you build your partnership. So with that, let me end my presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Anil. It was so clearly explained. I know many times I also bugged you why it takes so long for getting into that, but it was so well explained. Thank you very much. Now we move on to the next speaker, Dr. Pradipta Biswas. Dr. Pradipta is an assistant professor at the Center for Product Design and Manufacturing and affiliated faculty at Robert Bosch Center for Cyber Physical Systems of Indian Institute of Science. His research focuses on user modeling and multimodal human-machine interaction for aviation and automotive environments and for assistive technology. He is a co-chair of IRG AVA and focus group on smart TV. He is a distinguished member of UKRI International Development, Society for Flight Test Engineers, and many more things. Some of the courses he conducts in premier institutes includes courses on artificial intelligence and machine learning and a human-computer interface. It's really a honor to have you, Dr. Pratipda Biswas. Over to you. And hear audio. Sujata, we can't hear any audio.
Neither can I. I don't know if he started speaking.
Hello.
Yeah.
Is it? Yeah. Am I audible now?
Yes, yes.
Very good. And is my screen visible to everyone?
Yeah, we can.
Yes, it is. Yes.
All perfect. Let me start. So thanks for the introduction, madam. And I am going to present, I put two different titles. So IT for all or electronic inclusion for users with SSFI. And a little bit background. So I am very glad that Mrs. Sudhakal mentioned about the collaboration between IIT Kharagpur and IICP and Calcutta. So that was during my master. So I was also played a small part in that, and that made me interested to the cause or developing systems for people with different range of abilities. And then I spent around 10 years in Cambridge and mostly work on assistive technologies and something called inclusive design. And then I came back in Bangalore in 2016 and I set up my own lab. So I term it as Intelligent Inclusive Interaction Design Lab, and we undertake research on applying artificial intelligence and machine learning technologies for developing inclusive interfaces. And although our main focus is on developing inclusive system, but we mostly got funding from automotive industry and also the various DRDO labs, which also kind of support the term that whatever we are developing as assistive technology, that is not only confined to what the marketing experts say about 2% or even less population, but it has a much wider appeal for a larger segment of the society. Moving on, the main objective of our research, which was initially funded by DST Early Career Fellowship, and also I am very grateful to Professor Probhakar, who kind of kindly introduced me to this Vidya Sagar in 2016, and also helped me before I got my first funding as a DST Early Career Fellowship. And later on, I got some support from Microsoft Research and also a AI for Accessibility grant from Microsoft. So we are trying to making information technology accessible for all. And we mostly concentrated on developing IS control interaction techniques and helping social inclusion, which we already discussed about. However, before developing a product, in fact, we already developed a product. And I remember in 2016 summer when I came with my students and this whatever we thought a fantastic system, but no one can use it, and both me and students were frustrated. And then we took a step back and looked at that what is happening to these users. And most of the students in Vidyasagar whom we interacted with are affected by cerebral palsy, which is a issue with brain, and none of us are have a medical background. So with the help of this device, IGES tracker, which tracks where we are looking at, and now commercial devices are available, we rather use the low-cost ones. We undertook a series of study to understand their ocular parameters. So the first study was very simple. We displayed a white dot in a black screen, and we asked the users that just look at the white dot, and then we analyzed their fixation patterns. What we noted that many users with cerebral palsy, they could fixate attention on the point, but they have more uncontrolled eye gaze movement than their able-bodied counterpart, which gives us some idea about what should be the minimum target size on screen. Next, we try to understand their eye movement patterns, and we set up again a very simple game. We ask them that you look at the screen, wherever you are looking at, the color will be changed, and if you look longer, the color will change from green to yellow to red. So in this screen, you can see that pattern by a able-bodied user where the whole screen is red and white, while these users, they really struggle to color the top left corner of the screen. And this is very important because when we start to populate controls on a screen, we first start with the top left corner and then we go towards right and bottom. And finally, we analyzed a game in which we show 10 balloons on the screen, and we tell them that if you fix it attention long on the balloon, it will blast. And we found that instead of a left to right and top to bottom search pattern, they first fixate attention at the middle portion of the screen and then look at the targets in more a radial fashion. So we further confirmed these findings through a study in which we compared two user interface and with a very simple game in which they have to construct a word by selecting appropriate letters. In one screen, we put the letters in their preferred screen position, which we found from our studies. In the second screen, all these letters were randomly arranged. And we noted that users can statistically significantly perform this task faster when the elements are arranged in their preferred position. With this knowledge, we developed various applications. The most important was a virtual keyboard, which here you can see one user is using. And we also got another user. It happens to be Professor M. Vijayan, who is presently Albert Einstein professor at our institute and formerly the president of INSA. He was diagnosed with ALS on his 75th birthday, and then he started using our system, and now he regularly uses our virtual keyboard, and he also kindly mentioned our work in his memoir. So with this virtual keyboard, this uses a two-screen layout following our approach without putting any control on the top left corner and with maintaining a minimum target size and inter-screen distance. May I request everyone to mute, please? Some noise is coming up. So moving on, we are presently developing a Indian language version of this keyboard. So we are developing Hindi, Tamil, and Kannada version. Moving on, we worked on various applications. So I'm just trying to going back. Anyway, let me keep going. So we tried to develop various applications like chat application and then browser application, which Professor Vijayan is regularly using, and also applications for checking emails and so on. And then we took one step further, which Professor Prabhakar has just explained, that why to stay only within the computer, going out of the computer. So from last 2019 summer onwards, till the onset of lockdown, we give these users various robotic arms. So this one is a very cheap DIY kit bought from Amazon. And these users can pick and drop objects, and also they can operate the robotic arm and bring it at their specific position. Why we are trying to do that? Because we noted that some of these users, they are involved in fabric printing job, and which is both tedious for both the person and their able-bodied counterpart. So we tried to train the robot to do the tedious part, and these users, they can explore many other activities using the robotic arm beyond the only fabric printing task. So in somehow we will try to reduce the digital divide, that this particular set of users, they were not doing any physical manipulation of objects, but we can enable them to do the physical manipulation of objects using cyber physical system. And in parallel, we also undertook research on deep learning and computer vision. So one issue with all this eye gaze tracking interface that we need a separate hardware. So now we developed, thanks to our aviation research related grant, that we developed our own eye gaze tracker, which can be operated just with a web camera, and without any extra hardware, users can use eye gaze control interface. So hopefully when the school will open hopefully in 21, we will deploy many similar system to the school. We also worked with a small startup and undertook some studies with a dyslexic student, and we found that eye movement pattern can also be used to detect early signs of dyslexia. For lack of time, I'm not going into the detail of the study, but we can detect opposite eye gaze movement, that means right to left eye gaze movement for English script using eye gaze tracker, and use it to detect early onset of dyslexia. And then we try to do big. So I presently co-chair one inter-reputer group of audiovisual media accessibility at International Telecommunication Union, which is the telecom branch of UNO. And I am trying to develop a new ITU recommendation which promotes this inclusive design by personalizing user interfaces for different range of abilities and different context of use. And in the process, we are also looking at different existing ISO standards and try to make it acceptable for various industries like BBC, Microsoft, BT, and so on. And this is my last slide, and it's kind of a bit advertisement. So we are organizing a workshop on accessible augmented and virtual reality system at ACM SIGCHI Conference on Human Factors. The whole conference and workshop will be virtual in next May, and we have a very distinguished list of keynote speakers, including the chief accessibility manager of both Verizon Media and Google, and also the organizing team consists of researchers from Microsoft Research, universities of Cambridge, Barcelona, and Maryland. So I encourage researchers and practitioners to consider submitting papers to our workshop, which will be later published in a reputed journal. So with that, I will stop talking. I think I got slightly beyond schedule, but many thanks for the opportunity again. Thanks, Kalpana ma'am, for invitation, and I will be happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Pratika. It was very nice, and really we'll be looking forward to see the eye gaze enabled robotics in our vocational center, along with, of course, our communication systems. Thank you very much for taking time off and doing this presentation. Now we'll be going to the last presentation by Mr. Narayanan Ramakrishnan. He is the CEO of Avas, a company that creates assistive technology products to empower children and their caregivers. Their products Avas, Free Speech, and MDA Avas Reader are focused on enabling children to communicate and learn better. After completing his master's, Narayanan Ramakrishnan in computer sciences from Georgia Institute of Technology, Atlanta, he worked with meetup.com in New York and chose to return to India to work on building and scaling assistive technology products at Avas Inc. with his team. Quoting him, "I love building technology products that solve a real world problem and also impacts people's lives positively." Thank you, Mr. Narayanan, and welcome you for this session.
Thank you so much, Kalpana. I'll just start sharing my screen and let me know if this is visible. I must tell you that it's a real honor to share this platform with people like Dr. Sudhakar, Rajul, Poonam, all of you who have actually set up this entire AAC, made AAC popular, starting from since so many years, and it's a real honor to share this platform with you. And like Poonam was mentioning at the start of this webinar, is that Avas actually came out say after that Silent Revolution conference, and then how a lot of our work has happened through Vidya Sagar. We used to have a Avas bench where we would sit and prototype solutions and test it with students at Vidya Sagar. So having said that, I know it's been a long session for everyone. I will try and keep this presentation to be quick. I will focus on certain stories and our experiences of people using AAC in this talk. And so I'll start by asking everyone a question. How have you experienced frustration in the last 256 days? So yeah, I'm counting the number of days since we started the lockdown of sorts in India. And I'm guessing the answer is almost like an affirmative for everyone. And have you spoken about this frustration with your family or friends? Right. So, like for example, I do talk about it, crib about it, the fact that we are not able to go out, and that frustration is always there for all of us, right? So we speak about it. And so in a similar way, Shiva as well, right? So Shiva has spoken about his frustrations too, but with a very crucial difference. And I will show you how. So this is Shiva communicating his frustrations about this lockdown using Avaz.
Chocolate, skating, skating, swimming, swimming. I want to go out and walk, swimming, skating, bachelor hotel, porata and beef, porata and beef, porata and beef.
So that's Shiva, who has autism, and he communicates his thoughts, frustrations, inability to do his favorite things, all through Avaz. So this is what we build. We build communication systems and technology products that empower and educate people with disabilities. And we are used over in over 50 countries by over 75,000 people. But today I want to share about Avaz and how stories about parents using Avaz in different contexts, different situations, and like small but really powerful stories. I will start with the story from Shefali. Shefali is a mother of Agastya. Agastya is a 12-year-old boy with autism. He is partially verbal, and so this is a story that Shefali tells, and I'll let her. I'll play the video that kind of explains it. So.
Another example, very, very important, I would like to share, which happened somewhere around that time only, within 2 months of that one of these nights, though I have taught Agastya, when he's not feeling well, that what illness you have, or if you have any pain, what is the pain or the medicine. But one of these nights he woke up at 3 a.m. He was extremely, extremely irritated. He was not communicating. He was fighting a lot, and we were not able to understand that what does he want. I thought he has some pain, so I got him ibugesic, but he refused to take it. When he refused to take ibugesic, my husband picked up iPad and opened Avaz for him, the medicine board. In that he chose Alka-Seltzer.
Alka-Seltzer.
Alka-Seltzer we give him whenever he has tummy problems, acidity or gas or any sort of problem. So he took that, and within 20 minutes of that, he slept. So, whatever little bit inhibitions I had in my head at that time, they went away. Because I understood the power of an AAC device. All right. And we made Avaz an integral part of our lives after that. So whatever speech target or whatever we were teaching to Agastya, we started putting everything in the Avaz board for him. And another.
So I want to highlight a couple of important things. One is how Shefali actually put all the language that her son needed, the kind of different words, be it medicines, onto her AAC device, Avaz. And also, she and her husband, they did not assume and second guess what he was trying to say. They gave him Avaz, and that enabled him to communicate that he was having some sort of a gas and that's why he was kind of in pain. So under very stressful condition at 3 a.m. in the night, the child actually communicated using hours. And so that's the impact that an AAC system can have for a child, even if the child is partially verbal. So moving on. Sorry. So we talk a lot about communication in different contexts and communication outside the realm of like the school, outside the house. And this is a simple example of Nishant using hours at a restaurant.
Places to eat. Cream Center.
Yeah. What would you like to eat here?
Paneer Sizzler.
Paneer Sizzler. Okay.
Clear. Corn soup.
Okay, and corn soup. Okay.
You want anything else? One more?
That's it.
So this was Nishant talking about what he wanted to, communicating what he wanted to eat at a restaurant. And this is again important that the parents have actually taken the device and given him the opportunity to communicate what he wants to eat and not forcing him to eat whatever they choose. So they've given him the choice, and he is now confident that when he uses hours to communicate, that he will get what he wants. So that's the other aspect of any communication system like ours, is that it builds that confidence for that person who's using it. So moving on, we over the last 6-8 months, it's been a tough time for everyone, and especially with no face-to-face school or different kinds of therapy sessions. Children with special needs, children who have difficulty with communication, are staying at home, and there are so many emotional ups and downs for everyone that it is important for them to find a way to communicate. So I'm sharing some stories that parents have shared with us of children during this lockdown. So this comes from a parent from Delhi, New Delhi, and she was telling us how she was scolding her child for something, and then the child actually picks up Avaz and immediately says, "I want a hug." No, it's a small incident, but it really shows the kind of thought process that a child is going through. And even if they are not verbal, if they are not able to communicate, like this something like Avaz would really enable them to open up their mind to everyone around them. So we keep presuming, oh, he doesn't understand something, oh, he doesn't listen to me. But it's a lot about giving them the vocabulary to communicate. Similarly, there was a parent in Coimbatore, and she was talking about how the child was using Avaz at school, but never really used Avaz at home and to communicate. So once the lockdown started, and she was not able to go to school, the child actually picked up Avaz and communicated that she wanted to go to school. Now, this is again so crucial that we imagine we are always second guessing why the child is having a behavioral problem, why the child is acting frustrated. By giving them a way to communicate, you're actually reducing their frustrations. So these are kind of like simple examples, but something that really happens in day-to-day life every day now for parents who are using AAC. And just to finally wrap this up with a story of a parent was talking about how the child accidentally dropped his father's laptop, and he was feeling very guilty and he was crying. And then since the mother knew that he was feeling guilty and he was feeling this way, she actually took Avaz out and gave it to him. And then he communicated saying that, "Papa, I am sorry." Now the fact that he apologized and saying, "Papa, I am sorry," actually made him feel more relaxed, because he had been able to get his emotions out, saying that I'm terribly sorry for what happened. So this is what like communication can do. This is what communication can empower kids to be more confident, kids to be to have feel less anxious. So, and communication is again also much more than speech, right? So we talk about how we talk about face-to-face communication. There is communication where we are messaging through different apps. You can send messages through Avaz itself on WhatsApp messages. So, for example, this is a message that Tanisha she sent to her grandparents, saying that she was feeling sick, and so she's communicating to her grandparents through WhatsApp. And similarly, this was something that came about recently, where she told her mother that she wanted to eat chicken Manchurian, fried rice, noodles, and Pepsi for lunch. And this is almost spontaneous communication, and this is what a lot of parents, everyone wants to encourage the fact that the child is able to communicate their thoughts, express their ideas, and that is what any AAC system enables. And like what Namita was mentioning about how the communication partner, the parent or the teacher, plays a very crucial role in enabling this. And the reason I say that is because we are a community, right? We have parents, we have therapists, we have special educators. Everyone plays a very crucial role in getting the child's communication, like getting the child to communicate and communicate their thoughts, their ideas. And what we do is also try and enable this community. So we have WhatsApp groups and Telegram groups that where parents are talking about and parents are brainstorming with each other. So a parent might actually say, I'm facing this challenge. Then a slightly more experienced parent would talk about what they did, how they solved the problem. So we have a very budding community of parents and experts who weigh in with different ideas and advice. We are also trying to create an AAC community where parents are coming together. So we did a small, this was before the lockdown though, we did a small adda of sorts where we tried to make AAC a much more commonplace thing. A lot of people, many AAC users came together and we tried to do different activities with them. So in this, I think we're all working towards like making making this entire society, the entire community, entire world a much more inclusive place. And to that extent, AAC is a very important plays a very important role. The fact that people have to communicate their ideas, their thoughts, Avaz and AAC plays a very crucial role in this. So that's it from my end. I will stop here and thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for having me on this webinar and panel.
Thank you, Narayanan. It was very nice and such good experiences of the children you have shared with us. Thank you very much. With this evening chat with for taking AAC beyond classrooms comes to an end. And I apologize for overshooting our time from, it was supposed to be 4 to 6, but it's almost 7 now. But I think such immersing and engrossing presentations make up for it. Lots of take-home points have come from the presentations, and I feel very satisfied because every presenter had somehow highlighted, the importance of the language development, importance of the communication partner skills, and also, of course, the mode has to be there for a AAC user. And the highlight, I think, would be the belief in the child, the belief in the AAC user. So I think that has come across, and this is something I think each one of us who has been listening to all the presenters should be taking home, a point which we'll have to munch so much and think and see how we can use all these in our daily life to make that one child, the last child who is using an AAC, able to converse with everybody and have equal participation in the family or in any place. With that, I thank everybody. And if there are any questions, I don't know whether there have been any questions. If there are any questions, we will connect you to the panelists. So you can leave your questions there or send us by mail. We will be able to connect you to the panelists. Thank you very much. With that, we close this webinar. Thank you, Rajesh.
Can we have one gallery shot of all of us who are there?
Yeah, thank you, Surabhi and Rajesh. I wanted to thank you. Thank you. It was wonderful having you. What did Uma? I think it was overlap. I couldn't hear.
Yeah, a gallery shot of all of us panelists and people who are here. Yeah.
Everyone should switch on their videos.
Kalpana, can I say something?
Of course, Rajul, please. Poonam and anybody, please add on.
I want to say a big, big thank you to you and the whole team in Vidya Sagar for organizing such an incredibly interesting conference or webinar, whatever you want to call it. And I think it was lovely from the user to the person who manufactures it and how it becomes a product. I think you covered in this 2.5 or 3 hours, I think, the whole spectrum of the thing. Congratulations and 3 cheers for all of you.
Yes, I want to add that with Rajul. Congrats, Kalpana, and congrats all the AAC, all the panelists. It was so wonderful and so interesting. And I think it's a big step forward to go take AAC forward.
Thank you. Thank you, Rajul. Thank you, Poonam.
And tell everyone to stay back for the shot.
Yeah, I think Suja is doing our tech team.
We go, stay back, so we have a shot of everybody's.
Not everybody's video is on, but whoever's is on, I'm just taking shots.
Please put your videos on.
We can't put it through.
Who's this? We can try to help you.
I'm Monica Singh.
Okay. Yeah, can you do now, Monica?
My video is also. My video is.
Yeah, I've just given access.
They are doing. Just give them a few minutes. Yeah, Shobna is done.
Gargi Prakash, please put it on.
Hi, Poonam. Hi,
Hi.
Vidya.
Hi. Who's that?
Hi.
Mona?
Yes.
Hi. So nice
Wonderful.
to see you. Yeah.
Yeah.
You enjoy that?
Really, a lot.
Good. Lovely. So nice to have you here with us.
Yes. Looking forward for more.
Yeah.
Balaji, have you also taken?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. I think we got enough. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, tech team.
Yeah, thank you so
And
much.
interpreters.
Tech team, yes. Suja, Balaji.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Our pleasure.
Bye. Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Thank you.
Wonderful.